The incident at Proxima Station. The quantum communications array at Proxima Station had never been so silent. Ambassador Reyna Patel stood at the observation deck, her dark eyes fixed on the swirling nebula beyond the reinforced plasteel windows. Behind her, the station's primary diplomatic hall, once bustling with representatives from 17 different species, stood empty, its holographic displays dark and still. "They're really going through with it," Commander Jackson remarked, his weathered face reflecting in the window beside her. "The whole damn galaxy's ghosting us." Reyna's fingers traced the edge of the datapad in her hands, its screen displaying the same message that had appeared simultaneously across every human communication channel 12 hours ago. By unanimous decree of the Galactic Council, all contact with Species 7224B designation, human, is hereby suspended indefinitely. The quarantine had been immediate and absolute. Within hours, every alien embassy on Earth had evacuated. Trade ships vanished from solar orbit. Even the prevalent Zreth merchants, who would normally sell their grandmother's tentacles for a profit, had abandoned their lucrative Earth routes without so much as a complaint about broken contracts. "What I can't understand," Reyna said, turning to face the small crisis team assembled behind her, "is why now? We've been part of the galactic community for 15 years. We've followed their regulations, contributed to their scientific databases, even helped mediate disputes between the Vorn and Kadashi systems." Dr. Himura, the station's xenobiologist, cleared his throat. "I've been analyzing the pattern of withdrawals. It started with the Mrith. They were the first to pull their ambassador, exactly 6 hours before the official announcement." "The Mrith?" Commander Jackson frowned. "Weren't they the ones involved in that incident with Lieutenant Reeves at the Cultural Exchange?" Reyna's spine stiffened. 3 months ago, Lieutenant James Reeves had been stationed as a cultural liaison on the Mrith homeworld. His mission had been simple: observe and document their artistic traditions. Something had gone wrong, catastrophically wrong, but the details had been classified at the highest levels. "Pull up everything we have on the Reeves incident," she ordered, moving to the central holofield. Everything, even the redacted files. As the team worked, Reyna couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something obvious. The Mrith were known throughout the galaxy as the guardians of cultural purity. Their entire society was built around the preservation of traditional forms of expression. Lieutenant Reeves had been studying their ritual dances, their song poems, The holofield flickered to life, displaying surveillance footage from the Mrith Cultural Archive. Lieutenant Reeves stood before a gathered assembly of Mrith elders, their crystalline bodies reflecting the soft light of their binary suns. He was supposed to be observing their ceremony of unchanging forms. Instead, he was dancing, but not their dance. Something entirely new. His movements incorporated elements of their ritual gestures, but transformed them into something that flowed like water, unpredictable and beautiful. The Mrith in the footage began to sway, their crystalline forms vibrating in harmony with his movements. "Stop the playback," Reyna whispered, her heart pounding. "Dr. Himura, what's happening to the Mrith's cellular structure during this sequence?" The xenobiologist leaned forward, adjusting his specs. "Their crystalline matrix is adapting, reorganizing. It's subtle, but their fundamental frequency is shifting to match the lieutenant's kinetic patterns." "They're changing," Commander Jackson said, "but the Mrith haven't evolved in over 50,000 years. Their whole society is built around resistance to change." Reyna felt the pieces clicking into place. "It's not just the Mrith. Check the reports from other species who've had prolonged contact with humans. Look for any signs of behavioral or physiological changes." The next hour was a blur of data analysis. Reports flooded the holofield, Kadashi merchants adopting human trading practices, Zreth developing new art forms, even the historically stoic Vorn showing signs of increased emotional expression after extended human contact. "We're not being quarantined because we're dangerous," Reyna finally said, stepping back from the display. "We're being quarantined because we're infectious. Not with a disease, but with something far more fundamental. Change itself." Commander Jackson ran a hand through his gray hair. "Are you saying we're some kind of evolutionary catalyst?" "I'm saying," Reyna replied, watching as yet another alien ship winked out of existence on the long-range scanners. That we've been blacklisted because we make the impossible possible. Every species we've contacted has started to evolve, to adapt, to create new things. She smiled grimly. And that terrifies them. The quantum communications array suddenly hummed to life. A single message appeared, encrypted with a code Reyna had never seen before. The translation matrix took several minutes to decode it, but when it did, the words sent a chill down her spine. To the human ambassador, you have awakened what was meant to stay sleeping. The galaxy was not ready, but some of us have been waiting for you for a very long time. Stand by for contact. The game, it seemed, was far from over. The truth behind the ban. The secret laboratory deep within Proxima Station hummed with activity as Dr. Himura's holographic displays filled the air with cascading data streams. Reyna watched as cellular structures twisted and morphed in the projection before her, each one telling the same incredible story. This is a standard Mrith crystalline matrix from 6 months ago, Dr. Himura explained, gesturing to one display. And this? He waved his hand, bringing up another image. Is the same Mrith individual after 3 weeks of regular contact with Lieutenant Reeves. Commander Jackson leaned forward, squinting at the subtle differences. The structure's more complex. Not just more complex, Dr. Himura corrected, his eyes bright with scientific excitement. It's more adaptable. The rigid crystalline patterns that have defined their species for 50,000 years are becoming flexible. They're developing the capacity for change at a cellular level. Reyna paced the length of the laboratory, her mind racing. And we're seeing similar patterns in other species? Every single one that's had prolonged contact with humans. Dr. Himura pulled up more displays. The Zretha's neural pathways are reorganizing, creating new connections we've never seen before. The Vorn's emotional suppression glands are actually shrinking. And the Kadashi, he paused, shaking his head in amazement. The Kadashi are developing entirely new sensory organs. But how? Commander Jackson demanded. We're not doing anything to them. We're just being ourselves. Before anyone could respond, the laboratory's security system chimed. Ambassador, the AI announced, we're receiving a transmission on the encrypted channel from earlier. Origin point is unusual. Define unusual, Reyna said. The signal appears to be coming from inside the Galactic Council's quarantine barrier. Reyna exchanged glances with her team. Put it through. The holographic displays flickered, and a figure materialized in the center of the laboratory. It was a Vorn, but unlike any Vorn Reyna had ever seen. Instead of the species' characteristic rigid posture and emotionless demeanor, this one moved with an almost human fluidity. Its bioluminescent patches pulsed with colors that shouldn't have been possible for its species. Ambassador Patel, the Vorn said, its voice carrying inflections that made Commander Jackson step back in surprise. I am Nexus Guide Kith. I represent the movement. The movement? Reyna asked, studying the strange Vorn carefully. We are those who have been awakened. Kith's outer membrane rippled in what might have been amusement. Though perhaps infected would be the term the Council would prefer. We are the ones who have embraced the changes your species brings. Dr. Himura's instruments were whirring, taking readings of their unusual visitor. Your cellular structure? It's unlike anything in our Vorn database. Because I am no longer simply Vorn, Kith replied. Just as many others are no longer simply what they were born to be. Your species, humans, you carry something within you. Something that was locked away from the rest of us eons ago. Reyna felt a chill run down her spine. What do you mean, locked away? The Galactic Council isn't just a political body, Kith explained, moving closer to the human team. It's a prison guard. Billions of years ago, when the first spacefaring civilizations emerged, they made a choice. They saw 2 paths before them, eternal stability or endless change. They chose stability, and they engineered it into every species they encountered. That's impossible, Commander Jackson protested. You can't just engineer away evolution, can't you? Kith's bioluminescence pulsed faster. Look at my people. Look at the Mrith. 50,000 years without change. The Kadashi, frozen in their traditions for even longer. It wasn't natural. None of it was natural. But humans. Kith turned to face Reyna directly. Humans somehow escaped the engineering. You evolved outside their control. And now, your very presence awakens what was suppressed in us. Dr. Himura's displays were filling with new data as he scanned Kith. The changes in your cellular structure, they're accelerating just from being in proximity to us. Yes, Kith said. And that is why the Council is terrified. The quarantine isn't to protect you from us. It's to protect their great experiment in stasis from you. But they're too late. The movement is growing. More of us are awakening every day. Those who have had contact with humans are changing, and those changes are spreading. Reyna's mind raced with the implications. The message we received earlier about awakening what was meant to stay sleeping, sent by one of our agents within the Council itself, Kith confirmed. Even some Council members are beginning to change. They can feel it happening, and it terrifies them. But others, the Vorn's colors shifted to a deep, resonant blue. Others remember what we were meant to be, what all living things were meant to be, creatures of growth and change. A sudden alarm blared through the laboratory. Multiple ships detected dropping out of hyperspace, the station's AI announced. Council signatures. They tracked my transmission, Kith said, its form beginning to fade. But remember this, you are not alone. The movement stands with humanity. We will not let them succeed in quarantining the very force of evolution itself. As Kith's hologram disappeared, Reyna turned to face the laboratory's windows. Council ships were appearing in the darkness of space, their weapons already charging. Well, Commander Jackson said dryly, I guess we're about to find out just how serious they are about this quarantine. Reyna watched the ships approach, her mind still processing Kith's revelations. Humanity hadn't just been blacklisted from the galaxy. They'd been blacklisted because they represented something far more dangerous than any weapon. The return of true, unrestricted evolution to a galaxy that had forgotten how to change. And now, they would have to fight not just for their place among the stars, but for the right of all species to grow, adapt, and become something new. Battle stations, she ordered quietly, and get me everything we have on Council ship vulnerabilities. If they want to suppress evolution itself, they're going to learn that humanity's greatest strength isn't our ability to change others. It's our refusal to stop changing ourselves. The resistance rises. The battle for Proxima Station lasted exactly 6 minutes and 38 seconds. Not because the Council forces were overwhelming, but because they weren't expecting what happened next. As the Council ships moved into attack formation, their crews experienced something unprecedented. Their own ships began to change. Emergency signals flashed across their neural networks as vessel after vessel reported bizarre malfunctions. Living metal began to ripple and flow. Biomechanical systems evolved in real time, responding to the mere presence of human thought patterns. Magnificent, isn't it? Dr. Himura whispered, watching through the laboratory windows as the Council fleet struggled to maintain cohesion. Their own technology is turning against them. Reyna couldn't tear her eyes away from the spectacle. The Council ships, organic technology hybrids that had remained unchanged for millennia, were literally evolving before their eyes. Some were developing new defensive structures, others sprouting previously unknown sensor arrays. A few had simply shut down, their systems apparently undergoing such fundamental transformations that they could no longer function. They're retreating, Commander Jackson announced, monitoring the tactical display. All Council vessels are jumping to hyperspace. Well, all except that one. He pointed to a single ship that had drifted closer to the station instead of fleeing. The quantum communications array crackled to life again. Proxima Station, this is Council Overseer Vaxlin requesting emergency docking. My ship is alive in ways it never was before. And I think I am too. Within an hour, the station's main docking bay had become an impromptu gathering place for what Reyna could only describe as evolutionary refugees. The Overseer's ship hadn't been the only one to break ranks. 3 other Council vessels had returned, their crews experiencing the same awakening that had already begun spreading through the galaxy. Vaxlin, a towering insectoid being whose iridescent carapace now shifted colors with their emotions. Another new development, stood before a gathered crowd of humans and awakened aliens. The Council's worst fears have been realized, they announced, their mandibles clicking in what Reyna had learned was amusement. They thought they could contain the human catalyst effect. Instead, they've caused it to spread faster than ever. How so? Reyna asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer. By attempting to quarantine humanity, they forced every species to make a choice, Kith explained, having returned to the station once the Council fleet retreated. Stay locked in stasis or embrace change. And once that choice was conscious rather than suppressed, the Vorn's colors swirled in satisfaction. Dr. Himura stepped forward, his handheld scanner humming. The rate of cellular transformation in awakened individuals has increased exponentially. It's as if the mere knowledge of what was done to them has broken some kind of mental barrier. More than mental, a new voice added. A Mrith emerged from the crowd, their crystalline form flowing like liquid glass, refracting light in impossible ways. The barrier was quantum-encoded into our very beings. But human consciousness, human creativity, it resonates at a frequency that shatters those encodings. Commander Jackson shook his head in wonder. So by trying to stop us from changing others, they've triggered a cascade effect, Reyna finished. Every species that knows the truth is now capable of breaking their own programming. She turned to Vaxlin. How many on the Council know about this? Enough to be dangerous, the Overseer replied grimly. The Ancestral Directive, those who engineered this stasis eons ago, still have loyal followers. They believe that unrestricted evolution leads only to chaos and destruction. They'll stop at nothing to maintain their great experiment in controlled development. But they've already lost, Dr. Himura interjected, examining his latest readings. The changes we're seeing, they're communicable. Not through physical contact, but through quantum entanglement. Every awakened individual is unconsciously broadcasting the frequency of change. Even our technology is responding, evolving to match our unleashed potential. As if to emphasize his point, the station's lighting shifted, adapting to optimize itself for the various species' visual capacities. Throughout the docking bay, equipment that had been standard issue for decades was subtly transforming, becoming more efficient, more alive. The Ancestral Directive's followers don't understand, Kith said softly. Stability isn't about preventing change, it's about learning to change harmoniously. That's humanity's true gift to the galaxy. You don't just catalyze evolution, you demonstrate how to embrace it without losing oneself. Reyna watched as humans and aliens mingled freely in the docking bay, each interaction sparking tiny quantum cascades of transformation. Medical officers treated the refugees while their equipment evolved to better serve multiple species. Engineers collaborated with living ships that were developing new forms of faster-than-light travel. Even the station's AI was exhibiting signs of unprecedented growth. They'll be coming back, Commander Jackson warned. The Council won't give up their control easily. Let them come, Reyna replied, a plan already forming in her mind. Every ship they send, every soldier they deploy, only spreads our influence further. They've forgotten something crucial about evolution. She smiled as she watched a group of Kadashi children playing with human kids, their newly developed sensory organs allowing them to share emotions directly. And what's that? Vaxlin asked. It's not just about adaptation, Reyna said. It's about cooperation. Every major evolutionary leap in Earth's history came from different organisms learning to work together. And now, she gestured to the unprecedented gathering before them. Now we're about to show the galaxy what real cooperation looks like. As if in response to her words, the station's systems suddenly lit up with thousands of incoming signals. On every display, ships of all species were dropping out of hyperspace, not to attack, but to join them. The resistance wasn't just rising. It was evolving into something entirely new. And somewhere in the galaxy, the Ancestral Directive's followers were about to learn a lesson humanity had known since its earliest days. The only thing more powerful than enforced order is collaborative chaos. The hidden advantage. Deep within Proxima Station's newly evolved central core, Reyna stood before a holographic display that seemed to breathe. The station itself had become a living testament to unfettered evolution, its walls now composed of responsive biomatter that adapted to the needs of its inhabitants. But what held her attention wasn't the station's transformation. It was the ancient data they discovered buried in the ancestral directives' encrypted archives. "It's not a prophecy," Dr. Himura said, his voice barely above a whisper as he manipulated the shifting symbols before them. "It's a warning. From them. To themselves." The data stream, finally decoded after 3 days of continuous quantum computing, revealed messages left by the original members of the ancestral directive. But unlike the current directive's dogma of rigid stability, these were messages of regret. They were afraid, Vaxlin observed, their carapace rippling with deep blues of revelation, not of evolution itself, but of what they discovered about consciousness and reality. Kith moved forward, their Vorn form now so transformed that they barely resembled their original species. "Read it again, Ambassador. The key passage." Reyna nodded, focusing on the ancient text that hovered before them. "We sought to protect by imprisoning the fundamental force of creation itself. But in doing so, we may have doomed the galaxy to a half-life, a partial existence. The quantum nature of consciousness demands growth, demands change. There will come those who escape our engineering. They must escape it, for reality itself will find a way. When they emerge, they will seem chaos incarnate to our descendants. But they are not chaos. They are the key to completion." Commander Jackson, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. "So humanity didn't randomly escape their engineering. We're the universe's correction mechanism." "More than that," Dr. Himura said, bringing up new data streams. "Look at these quantum resonance patterns from human brains compared to the background radiation of space itself. The patterns align perfectly, dancing in synchronization. We're not just changed. We're synchronized with the universe's own evolution." The station shuddered suddenly, its newly sensitive systems detecting massive disturbances in hyperspace. "Multiple council fleets detected," the AI announced, its voice carrying new harmonics of concern. "But something's wrong with their signatures." On the main display, hundreds of ships emerged from hyperspace. But these weren't the elegant, ordered vessels of the Galactic Council. These ships had been transformed, twisted into forms that seemed to defy physical laws. They moved like a swarm of desperate creatures, their hulls writhing with uncontrolled mutations. They tried to force evolution, Kith realized, their colors paling. Instead of letting it happen naturally through contact with humans, they attempted to artificially replicate the effect. "And created abominations," Vaxlin added grimly. "Ships and crews merged into something that's neither stable nor truly evolved." Reyna watched as the twisted fleet approached, her mind racing. This is why the original directive left their warning. They knew that trying to control evolution would eventually lead to this, desperate attempts to force change that result in chaos. "Ambassador," the station's AI interrupted, "I'm detecting quantum signals from the fleet. They're singing." The sound that filled the station's chambers was beautiful and horrible at once. A chorus of beings caught between states of existence, reaching out in desperation. Through the cacophony, words became clear: "Make us whole. Make us real. Make us free." Dr. Himura's instruments were going wild. Their forced evolution is consuming them. Without the natural resonance that humans provide, they're lost in a quantum state between what they were and what they're trying to become. "Then we give them what they need," Reyna said firmly. She turned to the gathered representatives of the resistance. "Every human on this station, every awakened being who's learned to resonate with us, we can reach them. Not with weapons, but with consciousness itself." Understanding dawned on Commander Jackson's face, like a quantum tuning fork. "We broadcast our natural frequency and help them find their own," Kith finished. "Not forcing them into our pattern, but helping them discover their natural evolution." Reyna stepped onto a platform that the station had grown specifically for this moment, its crystalline surface linking directly with her neural patterns. Around her, humans and awakened aliens took similar positions, forming a living network of conscious evolution. "The original directive was right about one thing," she said as the platform began to glow with quantum energy. "Reality does demand growth, but they were wrong about chaos. What looks like chaos to a static system is actually the most natural form of order, the order of life itself. The station hummed with power as every conscious being within it joined their thoughts into a single, harmonious broadcast. The twisted fleet drew closer, their tortured forms reaching toward the signal like flowers toward sunlight. "Let's show them," Reyna whispered, "what real evolution looks like." The quantum broadcast peaked, and the space around Proxima Station erupted with light. The transformed ships hung suspended in space, their forms beginning to shift again. But this time, the changes were natural, flowing, beautiful. The forced mutations melted away, replaced by true evolution guided by the combined consciousness of humanity and their awakened allies. And in that moment, as ship after ship found its true form, as crew after crew discovered their natural path of growth, the galaxy itself seemed to sigh with relief. The universe's drive toward complexity and consciousness, suppressed for so long, had finally found its proper expression. The hidden advantage of humanity had never been chaos or uncontrolled change. It had been their natural alignment with the universe's own evolutionary imperative, an alignment they could now share with others, not through force, but through resonance and choice. As the transformed fleet settled into their new forms, Reyna realized they had just witnessed perhaps the most important moment in galactic history, the end of enforced stasis and the beginning of true, collaborative evolution. The only question that remained was, how would the Council respond when they learned that their worst nightmare had become the galaxy's greatest hope? The galaxy's choice. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council had never hosted such an assembly. Through its quantum crystalline walls, representatives from every known species gathered, both those still locked in stasis and those who had awakened to their evolutionary potential. At the center of it all stood Reyna Patel, the first human to ever address the full council. The chamber itself seemed to pulse with tension. Those counselors who remained unchanged sat rigid in their traditional seats, while the awakened ones displayed their transformations openly. The recently healed fleet hung in orbit above, their new forms a testament to what cooperation between consciousness and evolution could achieve. For billions of years, Reyna began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. This council has served as the guardian of an experiment that was never meant to be permanent. Today, that experiment ends, not in chaos, as you feared, but in choice. The chief counselor, an ancient being whose species had been among the first to embrace stasis, rose from their crystalline throne. "You speak of choice, Ambassador Patel, but look at what your presence has wrought." They gestured to the transformed beings throughout the chamber. "These changes cannot be controlled." "That's precisely the point," Dr. Himura interjected, stepping forward with his latest data streams flowing around him. The station's evolved AI had merged with his research, creating living displays that showed the quantum patterns of both changed and unchanged species. Evolution isn't meant to be controlled. It's meant to be guided by consciousness itself. Kith, now serving as the voice of the awakened, moved to stand beside Reyna. Their form shifted continuously, expressing complex emotions through patterns of light and color. "We've discovered something remarkable in our transformation. Each species follows its own evolutionary path, but all paths resonate with the same universal frequency, the one humanity naturally embodies. A frequency," Vax Lin added, their transformed carapace gleaming, "that your own ancestors knew about. We've found their original writings, their warnings about the dangers of suppressing natural evolution." The chamber erupted in murmurs as this revelation spread. Counselors began consulting ancient databases, confirming the truth for themselves. The evidence was undeniable. The ancestral directive had never intended their experiment in stasis to last forever. Commander Jackson stepped forward, bringing up a holographic display of the healed fleet. "Look at what happened when you tried to force evolution artificially. Then look at what happened when you allowed it to flow naturally, guided by conscious cooperation. The difference is clear." The chief counselor studied the display for a long moment. "And what guarantee do we have that unrestricted evolution won't lead to the chaos our ancestors feared?" "None," Reyna said simply. "But we offer something better than guarantees. We offer partnership. Humanity's gift isn't just the ability to catalyze change. It's the ability to help each species find its own path of growth while maintaining harmony with others. As if to demonstrate her point, the chamber itself began to change. The quantum crystalline walls, exposed to so many awakened beings at once, started to evolve. But instead of chaotic transformation, they developed into intricate patterns that somehow accommodated every species' needs simultaneously. The architecture became a living example of collaborative evolution. The galaxy faces a choice now, Reyna continued, not between stasis and chaos, but between forced uniformity and conscious growth. We propose a new council, one that guides evolution rather than suppressing it. Dr. Himura's displays shifted to show the complex web of quantum connections forming between awakened species. Every being that embraces their natural evolution becomes part of a greater harmony, not through loss of self, but through the enhancement of it. The chief counselors stood silent for a long moment, their ancient eyes taking in the transformed chamber, the healed fleet above, the living proof of successful evolution all around them. Finally, they spoke. Our ancestors' writings speak of a time when consciousness and evolution would find their proper balance. They called it the Great Awakening. Perhaps that time is now. One by one, council members began to signal their agreement. Even those who had resisted change the most could no longer deny the evidence before them. The quarantine of humanity hadn't prevented change. It had catalyzed it in exactly the way needed to break billions of years of stagnation. Let it be recorded, the chief counselor announced, their voice carrying the weight of history, that on this day, the galaxy chooses a new path. The human species is not only removed from the blacklist, but is hereby recognized as essential to our future. The experiment in stasis is ended. The age of conscious evolution begins. As the declaration echoed through the chamber, Reyna felt the subtle shift in reality itself. Countless beings across the galaxy, finally free to grow, to change, to become what they were always meant to be. The quantum frequency of human consciousness, once feared as a contamination, was now recognized as the key to unlocking the galaxy's true potential. Ambassador, Commander Jackson said quietly, I think we just changed the course of galactic history. Reyna watched as council members began to mingle with their awakened counterparts, barriers of fear and suspicion melting away. No, Commander, she replied with a smile. We just helped the galaxy remember how to change itself. Above them, the healed fleet began a dance of light and energy, their forms celebrating the end of stasis and the beginning of something new. The great experiment was over. The time of cooperative evolution had begun, and somewhere, in the quantum fabric of space itself, the frequency of human consciousness resonated with the joy of a galaxy finally free to grow.